Moved and seconded. All those approve, say aye. Those opposed? Is Hillary on?
Or did you want to?
I am here.
Okay.
Hillary's on, I
Yep.
heard her say.
So she's, can you tell her that she's up?
Hillary, you have the floor.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Wow.
Loud and
Okay.
clear.
Great. I can barely see Jim peeking his little head above that chair. I think that's Jim. Can't tell.
How's that?
Perfect. Thanks for having me, everyone. And thank you so much to all of you who just took the time to get this Zoom going. It's really lovely to be with you, even in this distance way. Can you hear me?
Yes. Keep speaking loudly.
Okay, keep speaking loudly. Got it. Okay, so I'll just get started. Everybody can hear me. Great. My name is Hillary Maynard. I live on Maury Hill, and I'm attending the select board meeting tonight to bring you into the process that began with a meeting 2 weeks ago in Greensboro Bend. In attendance at that meeting was the Hardwick Select Board, 2 Craftsbury community members, and the Wheelock Mountain Farm Working Group. And the conversation was surrounding the formation of an equity team in the respective towns. I'll give you a little background about myself. I work at Hazen Union in the work-based learning department, and I have developed an equity initiative for the OSSU over the past year that includes 9 staff members as the core team. I have coordinated a different working group that meets at Wheelock Mountain Farm each week to address issues of racial injustice and is composed of townspeople from Hardwick, Greensboro Bend, Wolcott, and Cabot. At the heart of my work, both in the SU and with Wheelock Mountain Farm, is that each and every person who calls this place home, be it Craftsbury or Vermont, deserves to be held in care, dignity, and belonging. To do so, we have to make spaces to listen to each other's stories and to learn from one another. We know there is not one individual that can answer for all people, and we know that each of us has a unique story to tell that has shaped our lives. We know we're curious about each other. And so much of this work is centered around admitting what we don't know and keeping an open mind to learning new things about yourself and others. At the OSSU, I'm starting with the adults in the community as they themselves have to build these spaces for the children we serve. And we hold the same type of emergent space at Wheelock Mountain Farm in our working group. Sometimes just offering these spaces to one another to share and learn and to practice real listening is the foundation to growing a culture of equity in our community. So 2 weeks ago at the meeting, we held a meeting that we hold every week, but we invited the Hardwick Select Board and the Craftsbury Equity Team and Select Board to be a part of that meeting. Linda Ramsdell and Emily McClure attended, and Lucian Avery and Sherry Cornish from the Hardwick Select Board were there. Our working group is always structured with an emergent process of sharing in which a question is brought to the table and each person that is present answers that question as a form of checking in and everybody else listens. And so in an effort to grow a dialogue about equity and racial justice with the Craftsbury Select Board, I just thought I would start by asking you all the same question that we asked at that meeting so you can be looped into that process. Does that sound okay? Okay. You can either answer it, if there's actually an answer that comes to mind, I'll totally take a little bit of notes on what you say, but also if you just want to hear the question and hold on to it and answer it later, that's fine. So the question that prompted this discussion with the Hardwick Select Board was, what do you need support with and what are you wondering about? And in that meeting, everybody answered that question. What do you need support with? And what are you wondering about? So if anybody wants to share, I'm happy to hear. And I'm also happy if you just want to hang on to that question.
Do you want to respond or do you want to hold the question?
What we need support with is basically what to do next. To me.
Can you say that one more time? I'm sorry, I missed it.
I mean, one question, what do you need support with? I mean, what to do next, I guess would be mine.
Awesome. Yeah, that was actually a lot of the answers that came into that space from the Hardwick Select Board and from the folks from Craftsberry was that, what's the next step? And we also, as the Wheelock Mountain Farm working group, we also answered the question. So we all were just in that space together. Well, I'll let you sit with those questions and I'll tell you about what we learned from the meeting. So that might give you some insight into what to do next. So some learnings from the meeting. What came out of the meeting was a general consensus that folks on the Hardwick Select Board and perhaps folks in Craftsberry didn't necessarily have all of the skills and expertise needed to form an equity committee, nor did they have necessarily an equitable process with which to form the committee. And that's where we were able to do some problem solving together. There was this great metaphor that came into the space that Lucian Avery sort of brought up about being on a select board and how sometimes you have to make really hard decisions about stuff you don't necessarily know a lot about. And it would be helpful if I could use somebody as an example. And I was going to ask Jim, just because you're my neighbor, if I could just use you in this metaphor for a moment. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say that Jim is tasked with making decisions for the town of Craftsberry that will impact taxpayers. And let's say it's about a municipal water system. I don't know if we're ever going to have a sewer system, but you get my point. Jim would probably hire an expert or a consultant, maybe a civil engineer or some company, to help him figure out how to do this really well and how to find the best system for our town and our landscape so that the people who lived here got what they needed. And I imagine, although I don't know Jim well enough, he might be a municipal water expert, and I don't know that, but if Jim just did it himself, it might look different. And I think that engineer that you might hire might charge a lot for a consultation, and the result would be hopefully a much more functional, fingers crossed, municipal water system for the town and all the people who live here. I think that's where Wheelock Mountain Farm and that group might be able to help. Equity and racial literacy work is exactly the same situation. We can't do it alone, and we can't really do it without training, and we can't do it without a system of accountability to growing our own knowledge of the subject. And so I think that that's where the Wheelock Mountain Farm group with the Hardwick Select Board and Emily and Linda kind of came together. The discussion was about compensating somebody for consultancy, be me or the Wheelock Mountain Farm group. One, would be way less expensive than a civil engineer, and two, will ensure that there's a growing equity both in process and in the service of our community. And without an outside consultant, you run into greater risk of tripping up on what you might not know or didn't see coming, thus making for longer select board meetings and a slower progress. There's a huge learning in this process for all of us. both those directly associated with the Craftsbury Equity Team and those witnessing and being impacted by it peripherally. Collaborating with an outside consultant offers new perspective that might be hard to see from within the select board. And so the summary is that building an equity committee that is equitable in process, formation, and subsequent structure requires a different process than usual select board meetings or just simply asking people to volunteer. It might be helpful to have a group that is being compensated for consultation and collaboration, such as Wheelock Mountain Farm Working Group and the Hardwick Select Board in partnership with that. That might make for a more equitable and transparent approach to forming this committee. And so we came up with a set of recommendations that we would love to share if you are open to it. But the process doesn't have to end here at all. We can continue working together, but it might be some concrete next steps. What came out of that meeting was these recommendations. One select board representative should be on the Craftsbury Equity Team to ensure communication and accountability to the larger select board. And then the following recommendations would be best supported with a hired consultant. The select board should collaborate on a plan for personally inviting people of color who call Craftsbury home to be part of the Craftsbury Equity Team. The select board can collaborate on a plan for analyzing survey results and forming a committee. And there could be collaboration on a plan for transparent communication with the town about process and outcome. We think those final three are maybe best done alongside the Hardwick Select Board and the Wheelock Mountain Farm Group, if that's something folks are interested in. Thanks for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
So do I understand that the Hardwick Select Board is joining the Wheelock Mountain Group in this consulting phase?
So Hardwick Select Board joined us in a meeting that was really just trying to brainstorm together, and this is what came out of it. Hardwick Select Board is trying to raise funds to hire an outside consultant, which may or may not be Wheelock Mountain Farm Working Group. Hardwick Select Board members also expressed interest in joining the Wheelock Mountain Farm Working Group again, just to be in dialogue about racial equity work.
Thank you.
So members of the Craftsbury Select Board could do likewise.
Absolutely, and Wheelock Mountain Farm Working Group would be happy to plan around the schedules of everyone so that it worked for anyone to be there.
Are you meeting in person, Hillary?
We did meet outside, distanced in person. It was a sunny day.
Other questions for Hillary?
I have one question, Hillary. Are you planning on attending the equity teams meeting next Wednesday night?
I am totally happy to attend that if that's helpful. Okay, I can be there. I guess one more thing that came out of the meeting is that the formation of the equity team that's happening in Hardwick, and this is maybe just information that might be useful to you. They are having people, you sent out the survey, and I think that's a great way to collect names of people who are interested. I think they are sending out personal invitations to people of color who live in Hardwick, and they're asking Wheelock Mountain Farm to help them figure out who all of those people are, so those people feel like their voice matters on that committee. And in addition to that, they're asking residents of Hardwick who are interested to write in letters to the to the town manager, I believe. And then they're talking about using an outside consultant to help form the group so it's representative of the town.
How big a group is Hardwick looking at forming?
I think they're looking at forming somewhere between, and Linda and Emily, I might ask you to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they want something from like 6 to 8, and they're hoping for 3 people from Hardwick, and they're open to people from neighboring towns to be a part of that.
Linda has her hand up. I don't know if anybody else can see it.
Hey, Linda.
Thanks. I just wanted to clarify that there were 2 members of the Hardwick Select Board there because they were very consciously not wanting to be there as a quorum, i.e. They were paying attention to open meeting laws. So there were 2 members of the Hardwick Select Board at Wheelock Mountain Farm. I just think it's important to clarify that. Thank you.
Can I jump in? Hillary, how do you envision Sterling College in this process, since the majority of the population at the college is transient?
Something just
Yeah.
happened.
Oh.
And so I'm just wondering, are they part of this, have they been invited in the discussion? Are they participating? It just feels like I'm wondering, is that a kind of a hole there?
Are you asking about Sterling?
No, I'm asking about Allied Vermont, the group.
Okay, there were two questions just asked at the same time, so I couldn't hear them all.
Gotcha.
So you're asking about Allied Vermont?
Asking whether they've been in any of these conversations. I know they have a fairly organized discussion going, and so I just was wondering.
Yeah, so there's been some folks from Wheelock Mountain Farm have been attending Allied Vermont meetings.
That's what I was thinking. Okay.
Yep. And then to answer the question about Sterling, I got half of it, which is what place do Sterling students maybe hold in this community, even though they are transient while they're here. And I think it would, and I'm just speaking off the cuff right now, but I think it would feel pretty important to be recognized as voices in this community while they're here. Also as representatives of a younger population of people that live in this town. And I would be happy to sort of problem solve further about that, about how to reach out to Sterling students or anyone for that matter. It sounds like the Hardwick Select Board is going to do some collaboration around how to reach out to people of color in their town, because they don't know if they feel like they have those skills to do that well. So we might help them with that.
Other questions? Susie?
Hillary, this is Susie. Do you recommend a regional equity team as opposed to all the town groups that are getting together? Would that make more sense so we all don't keep inventing the wheel? Or is it better that we stick with our own town teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a really amazing opportunity for the local select boards, or rather the equity teams that form from those select boards, to have some, I don't want to say alliance necessarily, but some ability to communicate with each other. And I think this one meeting was a really good first step in just kind of being transparent about what we know or don't know, where we need help. And I think both Lucian and Sherry were happy to just be in community with people talking about it. And they both were interested in continuing that. So I don't think this is a one-time opportunity. I really think it could grow. In terms of the equity team itself being just Craftsbury residents, or if you wanted to extend that, I think there are advantages to both. And I think in the analysis of the survey, and if you follow the recommendations of reaching out to folks of color in this town, maybe something would emerge from that process about going beyond this town or not.
Other questions?
How is Hardwick raising money, and roughly how much would we need if we were gonna hire somebody? Because we don't have in our budget either, obviously.
That's a great question. And I think that there was encouragement at that meeting because Hardwick Select Board is in the same boat, a tight budget with nothing to spare. And it was made pretty clear in that meeting, both by a Select Board member and a Hardwick community member, that there are people in town who want to give to this work. And there are people such as the Wheelock Mountain Farm Group or others who are happy to help do some of that fundraising to make this work possible.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Can I ask again?
Go ahead.
Hillary, for our craft parade equity team meeting next Wednesday, could you help the CET and the select board put together that agenda? Because we're not even sure what our agenda is, I don't think, for next Wednesday. And we don't have sort of the committee together. So I think we're all kind of wondering, you know, what do we do in a concrete way for that Wednesday meeting that we do have scheduled? And some people have suggested we put out a front porch forum, or do we target some people and say, please come? We just want to make sure that we continue progressing and keep getting off to a good start, because we've had a muddling time trying to get going, like I know everybody has. So we would love that input about ideas, concrete ideas for that Wednesday meeting.
Yeah, that sounds good. I am happy to help shape that meeting. My understanding is there's a core group that's going to move through the surveys and choose a group. Is that right? Okay.
There have been some people volunteering, and then we wanted to make sure it was a rounded group. So I guess that's what we mean, is that then we would choose some more people, I guess. Appoint
Right.
them.
So,
Invite them, yeah.
Invite them.
Invite, yeah.
yeah, I think inviting people of color that live in town directly from the select board will mean there's a lot of power and sort of transformation in that, and you reaching out to the handful of folks who call this town home. And I also would say that I'd love to have a conversation, if it's possible, with folks about this idea of volunteering for, because I imagine a lot of people filled out the survey and said they were interested in being a part of it. Is that true?
We had 52 survey returned.
52 survey returns, and how many said they were interested in being a part of the committee itself?
Half a dozen.
Half a
6.
dozen? Oh, it's not that many. Oh, okay. I think I might be one of them too, so I hope I'm not overstepping by being a part of this meeting.
There wasn't really an exact.
No, there wasn't really.
There wasn't really an exact question that
Right.
said, check here if you would like to be part of this group. You could check there if you'd like to be further informed. So,
Right. So you can't rely on that.
So we
being
don't
the
really
sum total.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, there may be
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, I think that, I think that there's this process is tricky because it's, to have an equitable process, it requires like some sort of sharing of power that is really not built into the structures of decision-making in any sort of structure. And this is no criticism whatsoever. I just think, select board members generally make decisions about who becomes part of something. And I think that's why this outside consultant could be super helpful in forming not only a well-represented group of people, but also forming a process that is ongoing for sort of growing equity in this town. And so I'm looking at Linda's comment. I'd like the select board to communicate clearly that the process for forming an equity team is ongoing, right? It doesn't just happen and then the team is an equitable team, right? This is really a team of people that's willing to keep learning and keep growing their process together. And I think that is a little bit different than the various sort of bylaws and structures that dictate the way most decisions are made. And so that's part of why I shared that process with you about the Wheelock Mountain Farm meeting, where we just listened to each other and everybody brought whatever they needed to into that space. Was just kind of a structural difference than what we're kind of used to. And so I would say before we form a committee, forming a process for how we're going to form it makes sense. It sounds like the committee maybe formed itself because only 6 people expressed interest in being part of it. And I would just ask how many of those people were asked to volunteer versus actually volunteered. And then what are we going to do about inviting people of color to join? Because actually the process of me, say, just asking a friend to volunteer for something isn't equitable. It's it's something I do all the time because I live in a small town and I grew up in a small town and I ask for volunteers. But actually, if I'm being equitable, I need to come up with a different process for forming a committee.
And I'm happy. Hillary, this is Penelope, and I think there might be some confusion. If I'm not mistaken, Susie, the core group was formed. The people who responded to the surveys have not yet been invited, et cetera. Next week is the meeting, it sounds like, that you're having to discuss next steps and how to move forward and perhaps create a strategy about how to engage with the community and move, have that next best steps. Am I hearing that right? So I think you might actually be mixing 2 things in there. That is what I heard. And so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, if I could throw this in there, I hear what you're saying about the structure. It is challenging. My background is in community engagement, and the CDC's structure on that, the gold standard of that is basically when you come to the table, everybody cedes some control. I mean, it's just what happens if you're going to ask people to share and move forward and come up with solutions, and everybody throw in for the solutions as well as the steps and shouldering the work. Then it means that you kind of have to cede control to the larger group about where that goes. And so I think that's what Hillary was saying when she was talking about the fact that the decision-making structures in a select board is not necessarily the same sort of decision-making structures in a community engagement forum, which is what you're talking about doing.
That's exactly right. And thank you for clarifying that. I think that already, we're on a little bit of shaky ground because some people volunteer to be part of this Craftsbury equity team that is going to perhaps nominate these other folks. And I think now is a good time to do a process check and figure out how to do that in a really equitable way in which everyone that needs representation in this town gets to be a part of that committee. And I'm happy to help. And I'm wondering if that's what the Wednesday meeting should be about, because I know it's an open meeting, or if everybody's okay with that, I could do it then, or we could do it beforehand. But I know for it to not be an open meeting, only 1 or 2 people can be there. So I don't know what you want that to look like, but I'm open to it and can be reached.
Well, regardless, this is a town-appointed committee, so it falls under the Open Meetings Act, regardless. So it doesn't, what you're talking about is a quorum, which is
Got
different.
it. Okay.
Right, so you've got the open meetings, and so of our select board members in attendance. That's the difference.
but we're on the core committee. All the. select
Which
board-
then turns every one of them into something you have to post for action, as opposed to just post.
Right.
So that makes it
Yeah.
challenging, because you're turning each one into an actual select board meeting as opposed to committee meeting.
Why are all three of you at it instead of just one like you are at other meetings? Just wondering.
That was the core committee. Linda's always the core committee, realizing that in the future, it is not going to be the future committee.
Right. So while the decisions and the strategy right now, these initial
We
decisions
need to get it
are
off
being
the
made.
ground and then figure out who's going to be on the committee.
Right, and then it would probably just be the one like she's recommending, so that you don't keep bumping into the core initiative. That makes sense. Yeah.
So,
That makes sense.
Our whole,
yeah.
we just need to get there.
I know.
Yep, Rudy,
Hillary, this is Rudy Chase. This process seemingly needs to be somewhat linear. We need to not put the cart before the horse, so to speak. And so I think baby steps along the way, forming the committee, forming the team, those types of things, has to have a great amount of thought. You can't get this wrong. Getting it wrong and going down the wrong road will just derail a process that needs to have a fair amount of thought put in on how you're going to present this, who you're going to ask. Thinking of people of color to go out and poll them to see if they want to be on the team would almost seem like we're maybe singling them out a bit. So I think we need to build a team, build a process, and invite them into something that sounds positive and we're moving down the right road. And that's what I'm hearing and trying to kind of assimilate what I would like to put together.
I completely agree. I think we are very conditioned to getting tasks done. It's part of our, well, it's part of my genetics anyway, to get tasks done on a list. And this really isn't the same, because it's really an issue of like building humanity in a group of people and in a community. And I think you're right. It has to be really deliberate, and rushing it is really dangerous. And that's something that came out of the meeting with the Hardwick Select Board as well. I think that, I think you highlighted a really important nuance. Of course, I mean, I am not a person of color, and so I can't even imagine what their experience is like in this town. But what I know is that the people of color I know in this town probably wouldn't feel super safe just jumping on a Craftsbury equity team. And so I think that you're highlighting this nuance that is really important, which is that an invitation in which it is articulated that the lived experience and expertise of a person of color and their experience in this place is necessary for this to work. And we're not claiming to know the right way to do it. That is essential to making this an actual equity team. And even if the person that receives this invitation doesn't want to be a part of it, the action of inviting, admitting that you're not quite sure the right thing to do, but it feels really important for somebody whose life is deeply impacted by racism to be part of this conversation, is that is movement in a positive and more just and equitable direction for the town. Just the invitation itself, right? So I totally am with you.
And if I could just throw in to add to that, in past dicey, very, very sensitive initiatives that I've been involved with, where you are right now, the step on Wednesday, there needs to be some community fact finding done. And this is, I think, what Hillary's talking about, where you listen and you hear from the impact, from people who are impacted, because it's very difficult for any group to set any goals if they don't know what the problems are. So the fact finding has to happen. That doesn't necessarily, everybody who's speaking to that and throwing into that pool doesn't necessarily have to be on the committee, so to speak.
Right.
And a lot of times, you have the listening sessions first, you learn, you listen, you learn, you then gel, you come to agreement with all of the people who are impacted and affected with what are the goals or what are the ideals that we're looking for, and then you figure out who do we have best in this town? What strategies do we have best in this town or in the area towns? How do we put this together to form strategies, initiatives, actions, committees, whatever is needed based on what are the goals needed? So I think that is probably where you are. It sounds like in gathering people, and that's why she's suggesting maybe.
Right. And I see Hillary's attendance at next week, Wednesday's meeting, to help us form that core committee, kind of solidify the core team.
And an outreach strategy is really what you need, because
Yes.
you don't have that yet. And
Right.
that's what I noticed with the surveys and the postcards that you're kind of trying to gather that information. But coming up with an outreach strategy, the only way to know what's going to be an effective outreach is to ask the people you're trying to reach.
Right, and that's
And I
why
think that's,
Hillary's.
yeah, so
you know,
that was
her
mine.
attendance would be valuable
Yeah,
to help us with that next step.
yeah.
Yeah, I would just as words of encouragement to keep the more we can keep this process of forming this committee more like an emerging process and less like by the end of next meeting, we're going to have a committee. The more we can lean towards that first thing I described, the more likely we are to listen better and reach the people we need. If we are too quick to form a committee and then say, oh, we'll get more people later, we're perpetuating that sort of rush to the goal, rush to the finish. And the process of this is so deeply important. And what Hardwick came away from, which I didn't say in the outcomes because it's kind of vague, but they decided to sort of turn down the speed on their process and be really deliberate and thoughtful and collaborative in developing that process for moving forward. So I think it's okay to show up on Wednesday, or I'm okay showing up on Wednesday and saying, we need to let this be an emerging space and figure out what the best next step is. And that step might, quote, look small, but actually that smaller step is a much more sensitive, thoughtful, inclusive next step in the process of building the committee.
I really like that point, Hillary, that you said slow the process down. This whole process all summer long has seemed to me it's just been jam. We gotta do this, we gotta do that. And I think I like your deliberative, slow process to work our way to do it right and not just because we're under pressure, so.
Well, and
Right. I mean,
I was just gonna say in two with that, Hillary, is that we're not looking at it, like she says, you're not looking for here's the solution in a package. The process is really building a better process is a lot of what in this topic area is creates the equity in the long run. It is having that inclusive and fluid and collaborative process.
That's exactly right. And Linda just wrote in the chat, she said, could we say the agenda is discuss next steps towards forming an equity team, a Craftsbury equity team? And I think that's great. I mean, yes, our current moment is thrusting us into conversations about racial justice and equity, and that is not new. Injustice is not new, and we have to balance the speed at which we approach these problems with a deliberate and thoughtful approach. We can't rush it. And I think striking that balance is tricky, right? Because you can also just stop the process altogether if you go too slow. So again, I'm happy to keep working with you all, and I really appreciate the time you've given me tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hillary.
Thank you. Yep. I apologize for our technical difficulties and taking on, but we have Alex Jump and, I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Susan Cherry.
Here from Harvard. Is it Harvard Restorative Justice, or is there a regional, or?
It's a regional, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, thank you. So I'm Susan Cherry. We run Community Restorative Justice Center, covering the same areas that the Hardwick Justice Center covered before we brought that under our wing. So we've hired Alexander Jump, who's local here, and will be really appearing around the area, helping to get restorative justice up and running in our region. I think it's an absolutely fantastic segue, hearing what Hillary was presenting, and then talk about restorative justice, because that's our mission. We are really about community, equity, voice, and inclusiveness. And the mission of restorative justice started about a little over 20 years ago, when the Department of Corrections in the state of Vermont said, we've got to do something different. We're incarcerating way too many people, it's costing taxpayers way too much money, and we don't have a really good system of repairing harm. So they did a lot of research. Some great folks went around to find out what was happening in the UK, what was happening in New Zealand, what was happening in Australia, and found that there were some processes that looked a lot like community gatherings, a little bit reminiscent of our indigenous tribal gatherings, where community members were actually in charge of the safety and well-being of the community. And so the restorative justice in the state of Vermont really did take that model, looking at safety first. What is the best result we get by keeping our communities safe and by involving community members? And that is what I like to call just plain good parenting. If you have a child who throws a ball through the neighbor's window, you know, you get a certain satisfaction by putting them up in their bedroom for a period of grounding, but they don't really learn anything from the process. But if you go to the neighbor and you work on repairing that window together, and you look at how does the neighbor want this to look, and you involve the person who was harmed, then you're also building relationship. If you send the child to the room, the neighbor would say, oh, that juvenile delinquent next door, and they'll really get to know the kid. When you take the time to introduce the child to repairing the harm and to know the neighbor, then the neighbor goes away for vacation, says, I think I'd like to have him give me my paper. I think I'd like to have him taking the dog, or whatever it is, you know, this is a kid who really cares. When you take the time to repair the harm, to find out what's needed in repairing the harm, you really do start building better relationships in your community. So the Department of Corrections, in their wisdom, got a wonderful Procter & Gamble kind of survey asking community members, what's important to you? What's the number one thing that you're going to trust out of keeping our communities, you know, in justice? What does justice look like to you? And across the board, from all the responses across the state, the number one concern was, we want a safer community, We want to make sure that our taxes are not going up because of it. We want to make sure that the community members get involved, and the people that the community members trusted most were their neighbors. So they felt like a jury trial was a little bit more respected than just somebody in a hierarchical position telling them how justice was going to be managed in their community. So we decided to form community panels based on some of the research we did and based on some of the work that was done in the United Kingdom, particularly around schools, and the work that was being done in New Zealand using the indigenous work that they were doing with family services down there in repairing the harm. A lot of children were being taken out of homes, and they regrouped and said, what does that community really need? So we learned a lot from that and found that inviting community members as part of the community panel was a little bit reminiscent of gathering the community to find out how justice is going to be served. This wrong happened in our community. It affects the whole community. It doesn't just affect the state. It doesn't just affect the people in the positions of authority. So whereas in good European way, if you do something wrong, it's, an offense against the king. And we brought that over to this country, and we say it's an offense against the state. So our state's attorneys represent all of our voices. Restorative justice is a little bit reminiscent of, okay, it's really the community. How does the community feel when something's happened in your community? How do we repair the harm by hearing from the person who was harmed, the victim or the affected party? How do we hear from our community members on how they want to have the harm repaired? And what is the person who did the harm, the responsible party, able to do to make things right? So we gather them together, we have those conversations, and we come to an agreement. Now, best case scenario, our law enforcement agencies directly refer cases to us, and we never have those go to court. Saves the court a lot of time, takes a lot off the docket. We're doing some experimenting with doing some mediations with landlords and tenants, for instance, to keep things out of court in St. John with our legal plan. We are really excited about the results. We've had the criminal justice group doing complete research around what has happened with the goals that we set out about 20 years ago. And they found that in relation to just programming through the Department of Corrections, restorative justice is more than 3 times more successful than the programs out of the Department of Corrections. Getting the community members involved and getting the victim to have their voice at the table when something does go wrong really keeps people understanding or in empathy what their actions did to somebody else. We've now learned there's a whole social science around restorative justice. The neurology is that when you hear how somebody else has been affected, you're more likely to change your own behavior. You can do a lot cognitively. You can say, if you do this, and this, you'll lose weight, and you know it all. And it doesn't always work, you can do this, and this, and you'll stop smoking. But changing behavior and changing habits, like drinking and driving, changing behavior and changing habits, like I don't have this product, but they have it at the store, and I don't have any money, therefore I'm going to go just take it. It's a changing of behavior, but if you hear from the store owner how it affects them, that person is more than 3 times likely to never do that again, as opposed to just going through the Department of Corrections and the court processes. So hearing from the victim, hearing from the community does make a difference in changing behavior, and we've seen great results from this. So we have Alexandra Jump, and she's going to be a visible presence in your community. We want you to use her. We want you to help her figure out who would be good community members to be on panels. And she's got the full support of the Community Restorative Justice Center. We're based in St. John's, but we really are a regional justice center. And she's got all the victim support liaison at her disposal. She has people who can help her and guide her, and so she's got a good network of folks that really are supporting the work that she's doing in the area. So we want to welcome her, and we just want to let you know that we're here, we're excited to be here, and we're really looking forward to working with the community and having the community be an integral part of justice here in Preston.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
One of the things that I would like to add is that I came to Greensboro in 1969 and came with my family. My family had been coming up for 4 generations before I did. And so Greensboro became part of my heart and my soul, and I have memories of going to Craftsbury Common to the fairs in the summer and being there. I once remember tying a balloon I got onto a bracelet that an artist had made, and I said to my grandmother, Emily, Nana, can I have it? And I remember putting the balloon on the bracelet floating away. But I've been, I moved to Greensboro in '99, was a resident in Greensboro for several years, and I moved to Morrisville, lived there, and about 9 years ago, I left to go down to Boston to get an advanced degree, which included social justice and ethics, along with a master's in divinity. So for me, it's a coming home. I know Craftsbury, Greensboro, Hardwick, all of these areas. So it's not just restorative justice coming back, but it's also somebody who knows the community, who knows farming. I work for UVM Extension as a farm safety person. I raise sheep in Morrisville. So I understand the culture around here. I understand the seasons, and I hope that I'll be able to get in touch with folks at Sterling College to see if folks are interested in being on panels. We have 2 different types. There's one type of panel, a restorative justice panel, that is a shorter commitment of time. It meets once a month for about an hour. And this is for somebody who might have a DWI-1 or negligent driving. And this is to have them come before community to talk about what happened, and for the community to say this is how they were affected. If this person passes through the restorative justice process to the satisfaction of the community panel, then that's part of their probationary sentence. So just like they might be sentenced to a crash, which is now an IDRP, but a safe driving course, this would be something that the court might say, you need to complete a restorative justice. That's a shorter term commitment. It's once a month for about an hour, for about 3 months or so. And that's on the panel. The larger commitment is when people are coming out, and people are coming out of corrections. And they do have to learn to be in community again. And part of what we want community to do is to help teach them to do that. And so we asked for a larger commitment, and that's a panel of about 5 people that agree to partner with this core person that is coming out of corrections, because they have been in a different world, and they're coming back into our world. They might be coming back to their uncle's farm, their nana's place, their place where they grew up. So they might be coming back to this community. So we want community members to help them. That commitment is once a week for about an hour for a full year. And that helps the person learn how to be back in community safely. The recidivism rate for folks that go through this decreases significantly when they go through this type of process. The training for it is provided by the Restorative Justice Center. You would go through training through the Department of Corrections, through the Agency of Health and Human Services, and get quarried and all of that stuff. Once that paperwork is done, there are trainings. They've been modified for COVID, so there are online trainings. Plus, we ask people to watch panels to see if they're engaged and they want to do it. So there are different ways to get involved. They're long-term and short-term. We're hopeful that by presenting here and by giving out, we have some brochures and some cards, that you might think about, well, who might be good on a panel? Who might want to represent the community? Or maybe I want to represent the community in doing this. So commitments can be short, they can be long, you can try it out. And you can say, wow, this really fits well, or it's a little bit too much. So I thank you so much for letting us come tonight and be part of your community meeting, your select board meeting. Are there any questions that we can answer?
Questions?
There's more information on our website too, if you'd like to look at that.
What's your website?
Right here on the front.
Yep, communityrjc.org.
Well, maybe the people visiting would don't have that. Is that okay?
Right. Communityrjc.org, if any of you guys, Carly, John, all you guys are interested.
Okay, we thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you so much. So sorry for the delay.
That was a great segue.
Favor, do you want to give us an update on Sterling?
I would love to. Hi, everyone. I'm Favor Ellis. I'm the interim dean of students at Sterling College. And I wanted to let you know that so far we have tested 113 students for COVID. 75 of those have come back negative twice. We test on day 0 and on day 7, and then 38 of them have come back negative once and will be tested again on Thursday. And while we're waiting for those test results to come back, all of our students are quarantining on campus and wearing masks and socially distancing and having a great time in their classes. I wonder if you need any other information or if you have any specific questions for us.
Any questions for Favor?
And then once the tests come back the second time, and then students will be moving more around the community?
Susie, I didn't hear the first part of your question.
Once the second round of tests come back, once we have them tested, they come back, and then everybody has been tested 2 times. Students will be out and about more in the community, because I know community members have asked if they see Sterling people out and about, what have they been up to?
Right. Well, to answer your first question, we will test on Thursday, and it's taking anywhere between 3 and 7 days to get our test results back. And students will continue to quarantine until they hear from me that all their tests are negative. So you shouldn't be seeing Sterling students out and about until that happens. And then, yeah, after all of the results come back negative, then we should be able to consider Sterling students essentially Vermont residents. They've been quarantined for 2 to 4 weeks, and they have come back with negative tests, and they're not traveling outside of Vermont or outside of safe zones. So they should be considered like any of us living our daily lives.
Will you be going through the whole testing procedure again when they come back from whatever you're calling break at Thanksgiving time?
Actually, no, the students will be leaving, most of the students will be leaving campus during the November break, and then they won't come back until the spring semester. The students who will stay on campus during the Thanksgiving break are doing our expedition. And then once expedition is over in December, they'll leave and not come back until spring break or spring semester. And then we will resume the tests the way that we have, or in whatever way the state Department of Health mandates us to do so.
Thank you. Anybody got any more questions for Favor?
So Favor, if the Craftsbury Equity Team reaches out to some Sterling students, so they could then join the meeting, because they will all, in person or on Zoom, however it works out that we're going to be doing it.
Absolutely. And I chatted with Hillary earlier and gave her my email address as a contact, because I have direct contact with student as the Dean of Student Life, but I'm also on the Equity Council. So I would be able to disseminate information about the Equity Committee to the whole Sterling community. And
Yes, thank you.
and we would ask that if folks are choosing not to wear masks in closed spaces, that we still be allowed to meet with you via Zoom.
Yeah, so that's
Okay.
good stuff to know.
Yep, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on. Sorry for the long delay.
No problem. I'll see you later. Thank you.
Okay, we have a discharge note that we need to sign for the 4Cs. We had two separate deeds, two separate deeds or notes that, and we only signed for one of them, so we need to sign this document too.
How did that just surface, the second document?
It was when they went through the,
Angela
Angela
dropped
picked
it
it
off.
up.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, I
So-
thought we were kind of done.
Can you witness all of these, or, right, we just need a witness to our signatures for this, so.
Yep.
Yeah. You'll see us all sign, and then you can sign 3 places, so.
I mean, you can see some of my neighbors.
Kind of a shady looking one, so.
Can't tell that man is behind the mask.
I know. And we'll put that in a minute. You want to make a motion?
Yeah, make motion, we sign the other release.
You second that, Susie? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Trick or trunk. They would, from what I understand, they would be doing the event during the afternoon. There'd be no night with having to have lights and everything. Socially distanced, masks. Most people were in masks anyway. Masks, so they were asking permission to be able to use, to have the trick or trunk on the common. So, discussion.
In the daylight, which is so superior.
You know what the date was for it? Bruce? I couldn't
It's a
remember.
Saturday, I think Halloween falls on the
The
Saturday,
31st Saturday.
so 31st, so. Very good.
I think it's a
You
great.
guys want to make a motion to accept it or allow it? or-
Kids, to be kids. You're making a motion. Yeah, I approve. Susie seconded.
Yeah, second.
Okay, moved and seconded, we'll allow the trick or trunk on the commons.
So do you want somebody to get back to Jody about
I'll get hold of Jody.
that? Okay.
Discussion on the use of the common.
That's what I took on, because we had said that we needed to have some sort of policy or protocol or something, and I don't know, I've been round and round, I got Michelle's protocol from the church, thank you, Michelle. I'm not sure how specific we want to be, or if we just want to, as we have, just ask people to please ask the town if they can use the common. So the list I made of things that we could put on it if we wanted to was, no undue risk or liability, supervision of children, you have to have a certificate of liability, what kind of events, for-profit, political, what about the noise, alcohol, food, cars, parking, is there a form you have to fill out, who's responsible, who's the contact person, what about lost articles? Can you park on the common, trash, decorations, bathroom cleanup? I mean, there's a lot of stuff if we want to get into the nitty gritty, which I'm not that interested in. So these are just things that we brainstormed, and I've talked to a number of people, including, Effie and Betty today in the office, and then Michelle's input and other people I've talked to around the comment. I mean, what, do we want things as they are, or do we want to try to have some sort of a policy and just publish it? I don't know.
Well, the other thing is there's, like Rusty DeWeed, I guess is going to be on the common on Saturday, which I just found out about
Oh, yes.
today.
That's gazebo tour.
On the gazebo.
Is that true?
So the village improvement knew about it,
Yeah,
but
so
then
that's
we
the village
didn't. So I think we have to have a process of communication back and
I
forth.
think that we haven't had really good communication with the Village Improvement
No,
Society.
and I asked Effie about what the history of our relationship with them, and she said a long, long time ago, they got blanket approval probably to use the common because their concerts usually benefit them. it's a fundraiser for them, and it's a great thing for the community, and it's not an all night long party or drinking bash or anything, it's sort of people sitting. and
Patrick told me a
listening.
little bit about it, because Bunny used to be on it years ago. He
Yeah.
said something about, like, they used to be in charge of, like, repairing the gazebo.
Yeah.
And of course, all the fence and all that type of stuff, so they would have events there. And I think the town had,
They put on events where they do the fence, they paint the fence, they repair the rails.
Yeah.
So that, but I think that the communication needs to be a little bit better about, because if we didn't know that Rusty DeWeese was gonna be there, and we'd already said somebody can have a wedding there, then we've got a problem,
Well,
so.
so maybe that's what we need to
I
do,
think the
just
communication,
A simple
this
calendar.
seems like just another pain in the butt for Effie.
and who the heck's gonna supervise all those things?
Yeah,
No,
and I mean, we tell people anyway, if there's gonna be an event that alcohol's involved, it has to involve somebody with a license and a liability insurance
Whether it's
policy.
being given out and or sold, you have to have a license.
It has to, if liquor is being served on the common, they have to have a license, like the bistro or somebody with a license has to be there. If it's a
licensed
If it's
service.
a licensed,
BYOB,
a
that's
licensed
different.
server,
Yeah.
somebody with a liability policy.
But bring your own BYOB.
That's not being served, that's
That's not
just,
being
Right,
served.
so
Right,
that's a
that's
totally
different.
different ballgame.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Being consumed.
yeah, all the concert people bring
Yeah.
a beer or a glass of wine, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah,
so that's,
So, I mean, we can write this whole policy,
no,
and then we've got,
then somebody
we
has
got
to
a
be
policy,
in
we got a
charge of
nice
it.
policy, it goes right back to the same damn thing as the ATVs. We write a policy, we write an ordinance, and then we don't have any enforcement, so why do we bother and pound ourselves on the head?
It
by
would be
writing
nice to
another
have-
policy?
Well, I mean, if it becomes more of a problem, we can further.
should I try to contact the Village Improvement Society and say, do you guys have a policy? And do you wanna just be sure to let us know when you have events, or?
Just ask if this communication with Effie, just come down, put your events on the calendar, so Effie knows when they have
Yeah.
concerts, when they have in Rusty Louise, and we've got it covered.
And just ask them if they have a particular policy, do that, I don't know.
They always tell me on the, when they have the music going on, so I put that on the town calendar.
So every 2 seconds, and when someone comes and asks for it, you know wedding, okay, then you just mention no alcohol.
Yeah.
Unless you got a license, you kind of know the things going on.
Yeah.
Like what they're bringing up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Soccer camp, don't let you know that.
No,
You don't
digging
need
a
a
hole
whole,
to us, to.
you don't need a
insert
policy
the
for
flag.
things that are just happening every year, same thing over and over.
Well, yeah, they can have.
We've already.
I mean, this all kind of evolved because somebody wandered out of the concert and went and they used the bathroom at Sterling College, and we said, announce at the start of a program.
Yeah.
Don't use
When something
Sterling
comes
College's-
up, address it, and if it becomes a big problem, we'll have to do something with the policy, but.
Yeah.
Hopefully we can take care of it.
Well, another thing you could do is just turn that into a list of guidelines, that when somebody's gonna use it,
Just-
hand them the guidelines.
You could say that and check, right,
And then it's
have you got
policy.
any questions that,
Yeah,
on this?
That was the beginning of this, was to have something to hand to people, but then when I got into the nitty-gritty, I'm like, where are we beginning and ending with
Yeah.
this? So,
Well, I mean, it's like the
just
street
do the
signs,
no-brainers
you
that
can
you
put
already
up
know
100
about.
street
Exactly.
signs to the common, and you're gonna miss something that somebody's concerned about. So let's kick a little a little common sense and just.
And if it becomes a problem, we can address it.
so the main thing when you do is just have Harry let us know when he has events,
Right,
we
so
don't
we
have
don't-
conflicts.
Yeah, so we don't get.
And I'll ask him if the Village Improvement Society has any policy, just so we'll know that.
Right.
Yep.
And so, and for him to contact, we'll let him know.
Yep.
Okay, so for now, we're just gonna, I'm not gonna talk about trash and bathrooms and cleanup, we're just gonna let this go through now.
Well, the other thing that we can
There is
do
no
also is, we can have
That we have,
PDF maker.
if they have a big event, they have to bring porta potties.
Yeah, well, see, that kind of thing, people may not know that, so.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I really, from the one who does the calendar and stuff like that, it would be nice if they had a set of rules of something. And we can make a PDF. I have Adobe that can make a PDF, and all they have to do is fill it out online, and they can just like electronically sign it and send
Which
it
is
to
what the
us.
church has a form that you fill out.
Yeah, but it's not electronic like that,
No,
so,
and then it's a contact person, so you know.
so you
who's
have their
in charge.
information, and there is,
Yeah,
and the other thing is, you know, it was like Molly's thing, well, she asked us 4 days ahead of time, well, you just had your select board meeting, and, well, I need to have an answer like today, well, you just, you know, asked, you
Well,
know,
that one-
today, so.
That one took care of itself, she just.
Right.
She scheduled another place.
But a lot of times, you know, we really need a couple weeks' notice for your select board to look at it and decide, so they need to be a little bit prepared with that.
So what you're saying is that we do need, like, we set a guideline, a
Well,
very
from the one on that
general.
does the website when it comes to the events, it would be nice to have me not making the decisions whether they can have an event, because I'm just putting it on the calendar, and their way, they're thinking it's okay,
It should
because
say-
I'm okaying it, but.
Oh, because it's listed, they think it's okay.
No, it shouldn't be you as a web person, it should.
Well, I know, but
it
that's what
should-
people think, you
It
know,
should
because
say
I'm allowing it
contact
on
the
there.
town clerk's
Yeah.
office, and, yeah, it shouldn't be you making that decision, so.
And then if it's something beyond that, then it needs to come to the regular
Yeah.
meeting.
And she can tell them that, yeah.
Yeah, which she does. So, so should I try to work up a general guideline?
Could you just send me what you wrote down, and I'll try to come up with a form that's simple, and just see if it's just something we can work
But
with.
do we want a form so that you fill out, or do we just want a bullet point of guidelines?
You want their information, one page is information, like with their information, their, how can I contact them? And the
More
other
of that
page is,
than getting into, you know,
Right.
Yeah.
kids,
I think
unruly kids and the
you
whole
gotta-
9 yards,
We
just,
want an application.
I think if you've got a
Just
list
saying,
of the things.
you're using the common.
we'll make a
fill-in out.
copy of what you wrote down, Susie, that's all before we
Yeah.
leave, I'll just make a
So put
copy.
down what your event is, what the dates are, the number of people, that type of thing,
Yeah,
and then your contact information.
And have it be at with that attached and say, you know, by submitting the application, you understand these guidelines.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you've got it right there.
Okay, so
But
I'll try
definitely
to,
bring.
and also
next
about
meeting is-
liability, because I mean, if something happens on the common and they did something
well,
stupid.
see, on this, it should say that the town does carry insurance, but you have to have a separate.
No.
Don't say that.
No, not say it. No.
Just say you assume the risk
You assume the risk.
and check with you. I
We
mean,
would be covered under any town-sponsored event,
Right,
but we're
But
not
this isn't
assuming
a
risk if a
town-sponsored.
wedding takes place and they get into a fist fight
Yeah,
with somebody else, that's gonna be on them,
Right.
that's not gonna be on us.
you as the contact person assume all this, or you as the.
don't, I wouldn't get into the contract language, just say the applicant assumes the
So
risk.
that's what I'm saying.
I'll have you look at it, Penelope, how's that? We're good?
But remember
You
the
can
kids
ask, I don't
thing, keep
care.
it simple, stupid, so.
Yeah,
Yeah, there you
We
go.
don't wanna get into,
That's very
oh, well, you know, your kid has to wear this color before they can go.
But I've
there.
learned just how to make the PDF things
I
online,
don't-
that's kind of
I
a
don't-
basic tip,
Because
so.
I was getting too nitty-gritty.
We don't wanna get into nitty gritty.
I do have a question though.
Yeah.
Should we add to that they assume responsibility for anything that has to be done to restore the common to the kids?
I have that on there, the cleanup,
Yeah, for clean, I mean,
Yeah.
just say that.
Or damage.
Right, or damage, yeah.
Get a credit card number while you're at it.
Keep it loose
Oh,
like
we can't
that.
run the credit card? I wasn't
If
getting
you don't
that.
keep it loose, then you have to get really detailed.
We don't have credit card here at the
So-
town hall.
okay, so I'll try to put them together for the next meeting.
Do you want
I'll
mine?
add it one. And I'll contact,
Work in progress, I'm sure.
yeah, I'll contact Carrie or somebody on that group.
Common's gonna end pretty soon, so we got a winter to work on it. Committee reports and appointees. Have you got any committees meet?
The, planning commission, I did go to that, it was interesting, they had, Linda was there. We had an interesting speaker, Lynette from, Water District, talking about wastewater, and she kind of helped us, Linda can fill me in here, but she
We'll
shared
put
some
it on that, so that
interesting,
way the video, they
guidelines
talk
about
Sorry?
walking through
Can you put a
town
video on?
wastewater issues that she
See if
had
we
other
can
towns
put
who
it-
have done, who have been
and then that way
through
you
this
can
and
hear it
what the
later on.
process could be like.
I don't know.
She was,
I don't
pretty
know,
interesting.
because of the tapes, it only takes that person
I
talking.
don't know if Linda
Oh,
wants
okay.
to add to that. And we also, we had, Tim Patterson, and we told him our concern, but we still couldn't quite understand the town's responsibility, and he's gonna check back and get back to us again. Tim was on the planning commission. So Linda, do you wanna add anything about the planning? commission?
Farley has her hand up too.
Oh, Farley's here?
Woo-hoo, there's Farley in the corner.
According to a button, so.
Unmute her.
there should
Hi,
be-
yeah, I'm disguised as John Zaber.
Sorry, I didn't see you, Farley, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I mean, I wasn't here. I mean, I was sitting next to John, but yeah, I mean, as Susie said, we had Lynette Claudin from the Department of Environmental Conservation talk about with the state, talk about what towns can do to address wastewater. And so the Planning Commission is looking at the issues, the limitations in the village around wastewater, as well as
Harley, you froze. Can you start over, please?
Okay, the bandwidth at our house is way low. So anyway, we talked to somebody, Lynette Claudin from the Department of Environmental Conservation, as Susie said, about issues of wastewater, because the Planning Commission is focusing in on the limitations of wastewater in the village. And so planning ahead, thinking about what could go on in the village and to address the wastewater needs potentially. So that's who we talked with. There's a subcommittee of Gordy Waterhouse, Lucas Smith, Schultz, excuse me, right? Schultz, and Emily and myself, Emily McClure and myself, to look
Rudy.
at, and Rudy, thank you, yeah. And to really look more at the wastewater issues and then to report back to the Planning Commission. So we'll keep you in the loop as we go ahead and do some more research. One last thing I have to say for the Planning Commission, I did last night received an email from Jim Peace, who's also with the Department of Environmental Conservation, and he did a stormwater mapping of the village a couple of years ago, and they took a sample off of several sites for the water quality, and with consultants who actually have dogs who can sniff out chemicals, which I thought was kind of a joke at first, but it's for real. And so it did come back that there was one site where there was an presence of some chemical. And so the consultants came out and looked at it closer, and it really wasn't, there was concerns that there was an illicit discharge happening into the Black River, but there wasn't. It was just a one-time blip. So, but I'll share that report with the select board so that you guys have it. Okay.
Okay.
She'll be back in a moment, which is on her end.
There you go. Farley, you froze there for a bit. You might want to maybe turn off your cameras. That might help you.
Yeah. Now I can't figure out how.
It's something at the town hall, I think, because she hasn't been freezing at all for me.
Oh, weird.
Okay.
And whereas the town hall's been freezing for me.
Yeah.
Do you want to ask your question again?
Oh, Farley, can you fill people in about the common water governance in Tim Patterson?
Yes. So just wave at me if I freeze up again or something. Tim Patterson did come to the Planning Commission addressing some of the concerns that not only the Planning Commission had, but the Select Board had in regards to the establishment of an ordinance up on the common for the wastewater, for the common municipal water system. And he heard us pretty loud and clear about the concerns the Planning Commission have, which I think are the same for the Select Board, regarding the legality. I mean, why is it that the town would set up an ordinance that would then be carried out by a group that's really not recognized as a town committee? I think that was the issue that was there. Tim's going to look further into the legality issue, and I think, and he'll get back to us. Linda or Susie, do you have any other memory of like the specifics?
Well, one of the things that I hadn't understood before hearing from Tim was that it sounds like the state of Vermont, who holds the purse strings, Well, one of the issues that I wasn't aware of before I heard from Tim was that there are PFOAs in the common water. And so the state is very interested in providing funds to drill, to change the system and find another source of water. But what it seems like one of the conditions for the state to release the money is that there an ordinance such as Tim has been seeking is in place. So that was something I hadn't fully understood before hearing from Tim. And it casts everything in a different light, although it doesn't obviate the issues around an ordinance. And it sounded like Tim was going to get more guidance from the sort of trade organization, I guess, of water systems. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that does. Thanks. And it is, I think it's like the Water Resource Association or something like that. But yeah, thank you, Linda, because that definitely is a bigger issue, that the fact that the water system up here on the common, it has tested positive for PFOAs or PFAs, as Linda mentioned. And the state has been struggling for the past several years to set a limit for the amount of PFAs in water systems, because it's such a new issue statewide. And so there's a limitation that's there. I know the federal government has also set a limit as well. And Craftsbury's Commons water is coming in just below that limit. We haven't gone over and over the limit that's permissible.
But that opens up a whole can of worms.
Yeah, I don't know what.
Yeah, and you don't do it.
But the fact that we never had a report from them, we've never had an association with them. No, and Tim took his ordinance idea from Hardwick, but they're a municipal water thing, they're not a private one. And when we talked about that, he said, right, and I said again, Tim, why are we talking ordinance versus policy? And because, we had a discussion last fall, so he kind of opened that up again. So he really had some good questions from the planning commission to go back and, get some more research, and then he's gonna come back, I think, to the next meeting.
But if the only way they can get grants is gonna be, if the town takes it over, then the town has a whole municipal water
That was a
system.
whole new piece of information.
And that's a
Tim
whole new package. We've never had a report from them. We've never had an association with them.
No, we
And
don't.
now all of a sudden the town would have to assume that. I assume the town would have to pick up any costs that weren't associated with the drilling, or weren't paid for by a grant for the drilling. That's a whole bunch of headaches right there.
Yeah, he brought that up, and we were all like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and having to drill a new well, so, yeah. There's a lot of
there was also an idea floated, and I guess I made a pun, about a potential new well. This was I think this was when we still had Lynette from the DEC on the line. There was an idea floated. It wasn't anything, it was just sort of a someday maybe, an idea that if a new well that has a lot of gallons per minute is found, and we do build a new water system in the village, that maybe that would serve both the village and the common one day.
We lost you for a minute there, but you're back.
We can't turn off our cameras, but if they do theirs, it does reduce the load on the bandwidth.
Well, we will turn off our camera. Maybe that will help.
We can't because of the Open Meetings Act. We have to leave it on.
We have to leave the camera on?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, we could do a more simple camera, but.
There you go.
Love this thing.
Yes.
Yeah, just love this.
I think anyway, just to say is that there are some, this is a complicated issue, and there's some really good points as well as concerns that are being raised in terms of the town agrees to an ordinance, what does that mean in terms of liability for the town? And Bruce, I think as you were saying, what does that mean for the town to then have some type of, not ownership, but relationship to the town water system, or municipal water system up here. It's become a lot more complicated, as well as clear to me as to what the Prudential Committee needs. And as Linda said, because of the state holding that holds the purse strings, that we can't access it without an ordinance. Tim will give us more information by next month, and we'll share that and be a little bit clearer for you guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you have a, web committee or a mental
The
health?
mental health meeting, we did meet, and we're going to be doing out of the darkness walk Sunday, September 27th. Right now I have 4 people signed on. It's not going to be a big walk. I'm hoping to get more people. I've raised over $1,600 myself. Together we've raised almost $1,750 in just a few days, so.
Where did you advertise it? I didn't see it.
Facebook.
I put it on Front Porch Forum, I put it on Facebook.
I didn't see it in front of
I made it as an event and everything on Front Porch.
Oh.
Our route will be going from like the gazebo down to Mill Village, up to King Farm Road, to Dustin Road, back to the Common. And then in order to make it 3 miles, because we need to do 3 miles for the long walk. We're gonna go near Sterling Drive, back to the gazebo again, and that's exactly 3 miles. The shorter version is just going around like Strong, instead of the Mill Village, will go down Strong Road and maybe just go around the Common afterwards, and that's a little shorter.
I think more nature one would be down over Colbert Hill and back up.
No, don't think so. Oh, that's a good one, Jim. I did that once for them. I told them it would be a holding in hell before I do that again, so. So anyways, we're going to have some refreshments and some water, and we might speak a little bit first. Scott Vogel's going to take a video of us, so anyone from Sterling is welcome to come, of course. So I didn't want to interfere with their COVID stuff either, so I didn't want to get, but I only have 4 people, so anyone who wants to come, please.
Well, they'll be out of quarantine by then, so, and probably want to get out and move around, so.
Yeah. Good idea.
Okay, any other committee reports? Road foreman report, it's been puttering, getting stuff repaired. We are aware that we probably need a little more gravel since we've used all of the gravel that has been crushed, so we started our old sandpiper machine that does screening and things for gravel and sand. That will be going down to the pit early this week. That jumps down to a follow-up project that he will be screening gravel that will be going to Scott's Lane, so that will be addressed as soon as we can get a stockpile of gravel and sand down at the pit.
What about notifying the
Well, they make it, but
I think it's usually this crushing stone that makes the big
Right,
difference.
if you want to notify Tony, that's fine. Give him a call and say we're going to start doing it
So
sometime
there's gonna
next
be, the
week.
town needs to do some screening.
I mean, we have to do some more work. so.
I'm glad to know, because I hear it, like I was telling you, I hear it across the lake, and it's like, what's happening?
No, as soon as they get down in, everybody said as soon as they get down in, but working on top of that pile, it's definitely created a different set of sounds. but-
So would it be like for a couple weeks?
I have no idea.
Oh,
But they're
We'd
gonna
have to
start
talk.
next
It's
week.
gonna be off and on for a
Off and
while.
on whenever they have a chance to be working on it. They're down to 2 men right now. Kent had a successful
Yeah, I
hip
was gonna
replacement.
ask you, yeah, Kent's good?
It was a good hip replacement, so he's bored, but he isn't back to work yet.
Okay.
The new truck probably will go into the shop in about 10 days for the equipment to be put onto it. So we're hoping by mid to late September, the new truck will be in. Clerk's report, taxes are still coming in. Talking about the possibility of sending Angela some delinquent tax names that Angela would proceed with and see if we can collect some delinquent tax before the end of the year. But that's a work in progress.
Also, just to let you know, the state will be sending out to all of the registered voters in Craftsbury. It'll be starting September 21st, and it'll be going, I think, for the first week of October. Everyone will be getting a ballot that's a registered voter.
In spite of the postcard that people receive, saying we have.
I know, it's kind of a double thing, so now that just everybody is getting it, so that way.
But the kicker is,
And then they put out on
that
video,
it's gonna be a real
not to
pain
pay attention
this year
to
is
postcards.
the JP's ballot is not being mailed out, so unless you request it, so.
And
If you
don't
want to
know
vote, if you vote by mail and you want to vote JP, you have to call and ask to have a JP ballot sent to you,
So
so.
people be notified about that?
No, somebody will have to take the initiative to call her and say, can you send me a JP ballot?
But people don't know that
But they need
are
to do
missing
that.
it.
Well, if they don't see it, then.
You know, it's kind of a catch
Somebody won't
22.
know that there's a JP ballot, so we'll have a lot different total on our JP ballots than we'll have on our,
Yeah.
so, and I don't know how the checklist.
So they can't come in and vote just JP?
They can come in here and vote just JP.
Okay.
But if they recognize,
If
that's
they
it,
recognize,
that they
yeah.
realize,
It's
oh, wait,
kind of-
I don't have a JP ballot, what do I do? Yeah.
I mean, I'll try to put it on the front porch,
A
but
general announcement for people that it's not coming out, that you have to come and get it, so people know
Talk
that
to
they're missing.
Effie and she can
I
tell.
thought Effie said there was only 5 names on it anyways.
It was all, yeah, it was.
So it's not gonna be
JPs,
quite so crucial as
Oh, so
you might
not a
think.
It's
contest.
not a big contest,
No
no.
contest.
So the only way someone would, is if there was enough write-ins to override someone that was on it.
But still, we
That-
should.
Well, you can, right, but it isn't.
Okay.
I mean, one of the reasons was it would have been on the back side of the ballot. So how many people actually turn over the ballot and look at it?
Well, I know, but still, we're responsible and try to be as equitable as possible, and let people
Yeah.
know.
If you can figure out what you want on front porch for, I'm talking to Effie,
Yeah.
put it on,
I know,
they'll have to.
I'll try to find out with Effie what the right
They'll have to
number is, and I'll try to get it
request it,
posted.
could just make it, if we could just. put
We just don't have the,
information-
I don't have all the details quite yet from last
Yeah.
week, but as soon as we do.
Once together, let's put the information out there, so people at least have a chance to
And then we
know.
can also say there's only 5 names anyway, so it's.
Yeah.
So not like there's.
No, a big,
The JP's and office won't give up their spots.
yeah.
So lifetime position.
Okay, any other business? Just going back to road foremans, we've been having a terrible rash of, I don't know who it is, somebody that's going around on weekends, pulling signs out of the ground on every corner.
Yeah, what
Um,
is with that?
Last week, there was a town's radar sign that was over on the corner by Severbrook Road and Creek Road. Steve Perkins finally found out it belonged to the town of Wolcott, so somebody had lifted it in Wolcott, brought it up and thrown it in the ditch.
Dumped it?
It was, they tried to take the panel, the solar panel off, and I don't know if it works now or not, but if you see anything going on, just, remind people that radar sign's $3,000 to $4,000 sign that they were throwing in the ditch, so it's time that this kind of crap stops. We've got, talking to the fire department meeting, and rescue in the middle of the night has a hard enough job trying to find a road. And when your signs are missing, they can't see those corner, they don't know that corner is Cedar Brook or whatever, and there's gonna be somebody's gonna have a serious consequence from some kids that, and they just do it time after time, so it's the same kids every week.
So,
Yeah,
so thinking about what they were just saying,
Yeah.
should one of us write an article to put in the papers and stuff saying exactly what you just said?
Yeah.
About, these signs being pulled down and.
Well, I put
rescuers-
that, when I put the radar sign on Front Porch Forum, I said, there's gonna be a consequence at some point.
Yeah,
Because somebody, somewhere, rescue's gonna look for them in the middle of the night,
that's true.
or there's gonna be a state police that's gonna try to find somebody, and
Yeah.
they have GPS, but we all know how GPS works around here,
Yeah,
so
it doesn't, yeah.
it doesn't, so.
Well, I apparently live in Greensboro, so according to
You do?
GPS,
We don't
yeah.
have
So.
Well, Jimmy's Farm is down below your place.
Oh, there you go, there you
It's
go.
in the swamp. Just before the fishing accident.
So,
Oh, dear.
so that's just the scuttlebutt.
Question,
Yep, but I think it's kids drink some beer and say, let's go out and pull some signs.
Mess some stuff up.
That's
Same
not
sign.
easy to do, right? Pulling up signs.
Well, they found out that they've got a sleeve that stays in the ground,
Yeah.
so they pull them out of the sleeve. Luckily, lately they haven't been stealing them, that saved us some money.
Yeah.
But
we should
when they're
put it
lugging-
back in.
When they're lugging radar signs out of Wolcott up onto the creek road, it's kind of frustrating.
Yeah.
And I know people say kids will be kids, but
No, that's not okay.
it's not okay.
Well, I mean, okay, but at times,
Times
grow up a little bit,
Yeah.
now you've done it.
Yeah, every week gets a little old, so.
Well, we need to get some game numbers out and get some evidence and.
Yeah.
We've already talked about it, so there may be some of
I was
those.
gonna say.
But that's not in the minutes.
No, I never said that.
On Zoom now, it's from.
Do you think a letter would do something?
What's that?
Do you think a letter would help, or?
It can't hurt.
It ain't gonna hurt.
I got the empathy thing and talking to some,
Well.
some of the parents might
Yeah.
click. I don't mind, I'll look up your old, the Front Porch Forum thing that you wrote and
Yeah.
try to write something up and I'll pass
You
it
just do
on.
it, now we can help it.
That'd be great.
Okay.
So,
Hey, anything for the short, yeah.
okay, any other business that people have?
Well, the only reason I wrote the follow-up there was
Yeah.
because of the other stuff, so.
Alright. Yes.
That's the reason I wrote all the follow-ups, because from the other meetings, we didn't really get.
Yeah, I was just gonna
answers
go into
from-
those when I,
So, yeah.
that'll be,
When I put my hand
she
up.
had her hand up.
So mine might kind of go along with what you were just talking about, and I was just wanting to let you guys know what's going on, and something else I've noticed first out of my property on Collinsville that I think is of interest. I caught Bruce a couple of weeks ago and told him that ever since I found somebody this summer to help me brush hog, properly maintain some of the trails on my upper property on Collinsville, and since then I've had a lot of vandalism from ATVs. And so I went ahead, I've been trying not to repost it like in your face posting because, some local folks get mad and think they've always been on that property and why can't they go on there, So I'm trying not to ruffle that up again, but I had to do it because it's damaging the berms that I got that grant for.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, so I reposted it, I put a chain across, I put flags on the chain, I put a sign on the chain, there that says, no trespassing due to unauthorized ATV use and damage. Just so that, when I talked to Adam and Donnie and Gordy and told them what's going on, the word on the street is, and I will let you know, they're also still going through the river and going up the side of it, and you should see the amount of collapse that's gone back down into the river now. So probably some flooding issues there. Gordy told me I should just, and this is not the minute, Gordy suggested I just pull a log across it. And,
Very good idea.
just to save the river, and so I may get Harold to help me do that, just FYI. Just
Yeah.
trying to-
A big log.
But, yeah, it needs to be a big log, I know. So-
Well, yeah.
So we've done that, but the word on the street, is that they're out of towners. And that they've been coming in and really tearing some things up.
on other properties?
Just up and down Collinsville and Square Road, and apparently the wardens were out there, I just heard this, the wardens were out there a couple of weeks ago and issued a lot of tickets. And so I'm gonna call Russ and see, just at least let him know what I've done, and et cetera, so that if there's any connections, they can make them. But what I noticed when I was out there last week and then yesterday is that, there's the road culvert, there's a culvert under the road that's between the town turnaround at the bridge and the entrance to my upper property. And they have been going over, you can see the tracks going over the south edge of that, and it's collapsing it down now, and the road is collapsed about 4 feet in over the culvert, because, and you can see their tracks,
So that's the other side of the bridge?
So I realized earlier they actually had here.
Is that an easement?
Yeah.
No, it's not. No, so here's my property, right? And here's the bridge and the boundary. And here's my entrance to the upper landing right here. This is where the town turnaround is, right there, where everybody dumps things, including carcasses.
Yeah.
It's about right here. It goes under the road. It's a culvert you guys put in maybe 4 years ago, I want to say. And on the south, what I would call the southwest side, the south side of the road, basically they started finding funds, and then as it goes down, and now what it's doing is it's collapsing everything around it and it's being exposed. So I just noticed.
Yeah, the college is like,
Yeah.
So I got 39.
Let's see, go take a look.
Yeah, I don't think it's terribly out of that part of it, but it will get that way at some point.
yeah, it's really nice. We just the college had one for
Yeah, and
to connect.
this is
So we
where I
have,
did
like,
the
big
grant,
meetings for the Kentucky folks as well.
to do our,
So it's
to
been,
replace the
instead
ones
of
that
me like
weren't
last week
well by
trying
the
to
previous owners.
move
Because
more
there
around
was a
and
lot
focus
of
on people.
wild branches right here.
This just does it
So
all
it was
for me,
dumping,
even though I
it
could have
kind
probably
of
just set it
wild
up.
branch
you
there,
know,
changing the
but,
trajectory of the river and how it went under the bridge.
yeah,
So that's
but
how
then
I
the
was
college,
able
I
to get
think,
a grant
ordered,
to do that.
now that, we're doing so
So,
much remote stuff, they might
As
have
they
ordered
come up from
another one.
landing, and I've
So,
got a big berm
I'm
across
hoping to
here,
have
drag
like,
trees, and I
access
drag
to
the trees
one
away.
somewhat
and then
regularly.
they come back out.
I'll definitely bring it next week for the
Yeah.
meeting.
Just put up
Wednesday.
They want
Yeah, but then I have trouble getting my
True.
guy.
Right, yeah.
This is a hard thing.
right, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, and I'm trying to do what my management plan says and keep
Well, I'll
these
ask some of the
healthy.
folks when I see them next on Zoom, like, how was it in here? I think that's $300 or something. I'm not really sure, but
They have huge. I mean, this is done. They have a road brigade.
oh, they have like the speaker and the mic.
How much does that sound like Russ could put up a camera there possibly?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's
That's why I was saying.
half dozen, not the whole world.
When you go over there, you can see exactly where you're at.
Yeah.
You're going at this.
Well, you can't advertise it, you're gonna have to.
Yeah.
No, but people.
They see it.
Yeah. It's a lot. Yeah, I might try to bring like a larger screen next week. It feels like every week I do it, it's getting a little better.
Yeah, and they got.
They'll probably have masks on those, so you won't be able to recognize.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, so
I'll let all the meetings problems with, and they got.
Yeah, oh, yeah, yeah.
From the border.
Yeah, I'll try
They got all
and
the numbers now.
maybe,
They come a long way south, and they know, they have a pretty good
Yeah.
pulse, they know this is bad.
I have a converter, so I might try and broadcast the,
I'll get hold of Scott. let
equity
him know
team
that this
meeting using the
possibly
owl
they're like the square road.
and, see if it'll work on my computer with like the little, plug-in thing, you know? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, that's not like, I mean, it's just getting worse in both places, that culvert and then.
So that plugs in and then this plugs in to this and then this plugs in.
Oh, yeah, you get it all thrown up for.
I'm trying to have it be healthy and, they just turn it back. But
Yeah, it is.
No, 'cause this is
It's no fair.
I mean, some neighbors, I don't know, you
Yeah.
can't have everybody just use it, because
Yeah.
you can't keep the water burns and stuff going, so.
You can't, and, you know, it digs in, and, I mean. we
It
see
does,
the-
because they want to got it, they want to jump and everything else. and I understand, but luckily,
Yeah, resetting
we
my.
got like burning and
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, I mean-
I know they're using it the way it should.
Yeah.
Don't go in after rain, I mean, you can use it right a few times,
Yeah.
so.
But I kind of feel like it's the same way you've got your sugar house and your lines and all of that, and you don't just say, okay, anybody who wants to come use my sugar house and my lines, you know, come on.
Right.
Right? I mean, it's the same thing, it's a resource that isn't yours, so, anyway, thank you.
Okay, next business, next meeting, we could go 9:29 or 10:05.
Invite with 10-6.
Or 6 of it, I don't know.
Oh, I'm supposed to listen to the speech
96.
machines on my phone.
Yeah, turn the calendar, so. First Tuesday, is that okay with everybody, first Tuesday in October?
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
First Tuesday, October, okay.
And we'll be here next Wednesday at
Yeah.
CUT.
Padlock for the AMU.
I've got it, I just haven't had time to go put it on. I'll
Okay.
talk to the road crew. we're
If
over
they
it.
don't, once we can call them,
Yep. So, speed concerns, summer's going away, the road's posted, we haven't got time enough to go through the, trying to lower the speed limit, legally lower the speed limit for the hearings and everything, so that one, keep that on the list.
I was asked to listen in on that, so I'm part of that association, so.
well, see if it does go away with the, no.
Yeah, with the
Yeah, but that's the thing.
Nobody's swimming.
We can
That's
hope it's going.
Yep.
It's, I think that, yeah, there does seem to be some camping going on there,
Oh,
at the public beach.
yeah,
We should put cameras in my front yard
go for it.
and point it over there. Oh, yeah, because then I feel really safe here for a second.
How long are the cameras?
We've also had campers, Little Losmer, but they're not staying there all the time. They just, they visit the day and then they leave. I don't know, they stay overnight. They haven't done.
Yeah, so that's what I was told, that's gonna, when I can know still going on.
No.
Yeah, can't be that
Not that I know of, and that's with Burrow.
There are a few people doing fires on the public beach.
Which is,
They've been doing that for years.
They've been doing that.
There you go.
That just makes
I mean, that is illegal, but there it is. so.
Yeah.
Probably do it on purpose.
They do it on purpose. Follow up on events on the common protocol, we've already covered that. Did the wedding venue, they decided not to
They
hold
decided to
that?
have it somewhere else, so I
Okay,
just
so
wanted to
that's
let you know
all.
Oh,
that.
it's somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay,
And the signage, have you talked to Steve about Colburn Hill signage for?
we're still trying to figure
We're
out how we
talking
word
about
it, we just don't know how to word it. It's a
Yeah.
public road, and if we word it the way he wants it, it's not the way we write it. We can't write it that way, so we're trying to come up with a politically correct way of making a sign for that.
What are we trying to say?
Well, they're concerned about the people that go out, they drive up their dogs and they go hunting up there and then they come back. And they're wearing out the road that the people on the road are kicking in money to do their road.
Right, I
And
remember
these
that.
people are wearing the roads out and he's concerned
You don't
about
think
it.
that's what's going up on my property, do you, for the bear?
I don't know. So, no.
Well, is he using ATVs or
Yeah.
using pickup?
Whoa,
They're probably using pickups, so.
they might be using pickups actually.
Do you see dog prints?
What's the track? Is it narrow or is it like wide for pickup?
Well, right, I mean, the
Pickups
tread's,
would
the
be-
tread's way different.
Yeah, well, you can't see the treads in the damage
Okay.
by the time up there. You can on the road, on
Okay.
Palmsville Road, but I'll look at it for that standpoint.
Because it'll be narrow if it's ATV, well, you're
It's-
Side by sides are
side by
wider.
sides
I
are
was
wider,
gonna
but you'll
say,
see the knobby tires versus the.
Depends on if it's hard or,
Yeah.
you don't up top because there's a lot of brush that they're going over, grading down, but I've got a ton of bear up there, so.
There's a
But
lot
at
of
least they're not getting your apples, they're
There
getting
you
my
go.
apples.
They're just eating its corn.
they can have the little apples, I don't care.
Didn't you have a sign up there, when you had with the
Yeah,
cable
yeah,
stores
he's
up
right.
there? And
Driving
then
around.
Mission New England, wasn't
Go
there?
road truck.
Sign
That's
you
the
had-
way-
you made
that's
up
the way-
some-
I mean, some do, don't, because they're trained.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember what you
Yeah.
said on the sign.
It's mostly, it's mostly
I can't,
dogs.
I'll have to go back.
They can drive around with a dog.
Is it
and
something
the
similar
dog
you
will
could
pick up the
say?
scent.
Is-
Yeah,
I
but
think
something
it's
that's
a-
like bark and they
open-
just don't let them
open
know.
trail only, or something, right?
Yeah, but that doesn't stop somebody, if they wanna drive up there with their dogs, they can still drive.
Yeah, yeah, but that sign, I think that.
The only thing you can say is dead end road, which might deter a few people.
Yeah.
And it may not.
Residents
Exactly.
only?
So I don't know what to do, can't do that.
No, unless public
You
road.
say please be,
Yeah,
Romantic public trail.
right, that turns
So
into.
anybody has the right to travel
People
that.
like
A
it.
motorized trail.
Motorized
Right.
trail up to the. Up to
And
the
again,
church.
they're putting money into it. Sucks for them.
you say please be considerate?
We're working on it.
Wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice if that would
It'll be
work?
correct when we get
I
there.
wish that would work.
Please be considerate. That would be
Oh.
nice.
Don't be an idiot.
So much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I know Jack's decorated about it, that would be
Getting a
nice.
little bit better every week.
Yeah, thank you for
Not
showing us
really.
assignment.
I can think of all sorts that I don't think are politically correct.